Yeah, I'm gonna I'd say the last 2 years when it comes to technology, I consider myself to be technologically obese. And
Mm.
that is Apple is the McDonald's of technology. Incredibly convenient. If you've been eating it for a long time, it tastes good, but it's actually really bad for you. And so, usually convenience comes at the price of health, whether it be mental health or physical health or whatever it is.
Quality, right? Convenience
Yeah.
versus quality. This
Yeah.
episode sponsored by Apple, obviously.
Well, yeah. So I've been on Apple products for over a decade. I think it's maybe 13 years now. And yeah, for the last 2 years, it's, it's been brought to my awareness through my own research, just how bad it is. And I do have a Linux based computer. I use an Ubuntu laptop for whenever I need extra security. But basically, what I'm planning to do is, yeah, my next upgrade is going to be a desktop computer that's basically a Linux based system.
Mm,
Uh, it's a much lighter operating system. Security is better. The big problem with Apple right now that is so controversial is, back when Steve Jobs was alive, there wasn't really much backdoor features being designed, and whenever government or FBI wanted to get access, they just shrug and say, "Sorry, we can't give you that." But
mm,
in the last 10 years or however long he's been gone, it seems like they've just continually gotten more and more friendly. And kind of the what hit me this past week, which is the final straw, is there's protests going on in China right now, and the CCP, um, the Communist Party there, talked to Apple, and what was happening was the Chinese were using the airdrop function to exchange information and communicate. And the thing about airdrop that's so cool is it's device to device. So
hmm
they can't intercept that information. So they don't know what people are sharing and they can't stop it. And so what Apple did was they made a change to all Apple users in China that it limited the amount of airdropping they could do. And so
mm,
uh, basically what's happening is, anyone who, because I'm also part of some technology freedom groups in Telegram,
mm.
and uh, you know anything that's Apple or Google related or Microsoft, you're pretty much at, nothing you are doing is secret. Like there, even
Right.
if you have the Signal app on your iPhone, they're going to be able to break into that. And there's a concept of security through obscurity. And so if you're using the most common technology, you're the most susceptible to hacking and security
Mm,
threats. But if you're using, with Linux based operating system, there's so many different Linux based operating systems for one, and it's less common, so there's less resources devoted to cracking those codes. The other beautiful thing about Linux is it's open source, and what that means that anybody on the planet can look at the code and identify security threats and things like that. Whereas with Apple or Microsoft, all that is secret. It's kept away from the public eye, which means not just any engineer can go in there and say, "Oh, Apple, you've got you left the back door open over here." But
mm.
with a lot of these Linux-based operating systems, they're open source, so someone goes, "Yeah, there's a security breach here," or a security, you know, uh, a threat. There's something that could be exposed here. And so, um, the trouble with going with Linux is just, I'm using AirDrop on my phone and my laptop, and my photos are shared to the cloud. Like it's so convenient. It's so convenient to
Mm-hmm.
have an to Apple. And then if you have all Apple products, everything talks to each other, and it's really, really nice. But I just made a repost from Joe Rogan, and San Francisco just passed a law making it okay for robots to kill people.
Now you're
So,
talking about something very interesting. Okay, because I I think the core of what you're talking about is super valuable. You want to have transparency with whatever devices you're using and whatever software you're using. And when there's no transparency, like you said, you're pretty much doing everything at the whim, at the mercy, and in full view of whoever owns the pipes, so to speak.
right.
Uh, the because I saw that too. The most shocking thing about allowing robots to to like use deadly force against
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
The most shocking part is not that um, some people wanted that. The most shocking part is that it was 8-3. It was an absolute
Right.
blowout. That
And
that
what I find
was so
fascinating is
crazy. I
that's
mean,
that's coming from a city who won't charge you with a crime if you steal less than $1,000 worth of product,
I
and yet they
think
want
we
to be able
could
to
call
kill you with a
this
robot.
I think we could call this maybe an overcorrection or an overreaction. It seems like the policy thus far has been poor, not very good. But this is like if you were having trouble swatting a fly with your hand, you don't switch to a fly swatter. You incinerate your whole house to make sure the fly dies. It just seems like so aggressive to me, and uh, it's like that quote. We were so busy figuring out if we could do something, we didn't bother to consider whether we should do something. Like, wow, you can make a robot that kills people, and how do you determine when it's correct to do that? Is it going to be a remote control type of thing? I mean, we already drone strike people probably something like every day on average all over the world, and someone has to make that call to decide who we do the drone striking against. I'm not for drone striking, by the way. Uh, unless it's a guy I don't like, then of course I'm all for it. No, I'm just kidding. But like, I don't think. I think it's a pretty big indicator that we have not communicated well. It shows a pretty big failing when you need to resort to violence. It's good to be capable of violence as an individual, but if you have to resort to it, it identifies a major failure on the communication front. So this seems like an overcorrection to already bad policy. And keeping in mind, unless someone else has a better idea, the whole point of having leaders or governance and policy is to make sure the marketplace is safe. That's all. That's really all it should do is make sure that people can enter and exit the marketplace, buy and sell and trade stuff. And everything above and beyond that is pretty sinister for the most part.
Well, that one of my first thoughts when I saw that was like, all right, we have uh, uh, people just went nuts in the last couple years about uh, police killing a man, and now they're going to have robots do it. I mean, it could be a scapegoat. It's like, well, the robot can't be racist. It was like, well, what about the guy who was operating the robot remotely? And they go, well, I mean, how far are we from just going facial recognition? You just program the robot or series of robots, and they program Max Shank's face into
Whoa,
the
whoa, whoa. Don't
software.
drag me into this. I'm not the one trying to put Linux on all my shit so I can buy Puerto Ricans on the dark web, Mr. Bledsoe. Jesus. I love Apple and China, and I use all your products. They're fantastic.
so so this idea, then you could just program, and so I think this is one of those things that would make some people feel safe. It's like, well, they can guarantee they're not going to kill somebody who's not a bad guy. You know, it's like, whereas like humans make errors. The robots won't make an error. But dude, how terrifying is that? So
Are you
there was a
kidding me? Robots don't make an error. Have you ever called customer support and they're like, just turn it off and on again, and the fucker works? And you're like,
yeah.
why is that? And they're like, I don't know.
Well, computers and robots are only as good as the program, and that is the person as good as the programmer. So the person who created the program, and it follows a code, and so it will in the end still come down to a person who programs that thing.
So do
Until we
people,
get to
right?
super AI, and then the computers are programming computers,
What's
and
that
then we have
phrase? A man must have a code. I can't remember what that's from. Is that from John Wick or something? Man must have a code. I like that. I like that phrase though. It's like you you know me. I'm a pragmatism first and foremost. So that means I will abandon all of my other principles if I need to. And that just means I'm honest because everybody is that way when push comes to shove. And we don't want to admit things like that. But the truth is that you will lie, cheat, and steal if it comes down to something that is really valuable to you, whether it's your child or your life or whatever. People will, um, you know, chimp out or go into lizard mode, and they're not really thinking of some sort of implanted moral code or ethical code that they've put into their psyche. They'll just go straight into animal mode, and you almost can't fault people for that. I think that's just part of nature. That's what animals do.
yeah.
Yeah, I
You
see
know
it
what?
getting. I see it being pretty problematic to have it built into the system to use deadly force on with robots on people. That's
Well,
insane. It almost feels like that'll never actually happen, but one of those things that is to be a smokescreen for stuff that's actually happening that's really bad. And most of the stuff that people should be potentially upset about, nobody talks about. For example, I was thinking about the word terrorist the other day. That word and the way that it has been written into the law is just a very sophisticated form of discrimination. It's kind of like when we talked about hate crime. There should be no such thing as a terrorist or a hate crime. There's already a rule that we have for what a person can't do. The problem with labeling someone as essentially the devil is then you don't have to follow the rules anymore. It's kind of like the word emergency means our democratically elected officials don't have to follow the rules anymore and all that. And, it's mob rule anyway. And, if you feel confident that having the masses elect a leader who wields tremendous power, I would wonder, what the hell are you thinking? I mean, even if the elections were fair, which is questionable, most people are obese, hooked on drugs of some kind, and can't make choices for themselves. So, how would you expect them to make a good decision for who should wield tremendous authoritative power? So, it's to me insane to operate under that idea. So, anyway, long story short, the stuff that seems to actually matter is basically ignored. So, I wonder if this won't actually be put into practice, but it's just another thing to throw people up in arms and make people upset about something that doesn't have to do with the many other things that might be going on.
yeah. I know we wrote down something last week that we were going to talk about this week, which we do every single week, and then we forget to bring up. So I'm trying to pull up that file right now. Maybe you could blather on for a moment while I look for it.
Blather
Can,
on. Don't
can you?
mind if I do.
All right,
So
perfect. You're the man for the job.
finally, I get called upon for something that I was built to do. Um, let's talk about exercise. So I think I mentioned the other day that I never liked exercising when I was a competitive athlete. The exercising was just a price that I paid to win. I desperately wanted to win, and it didn't really matter what the cost was exercise wise. And I think a lot of people fall into that category. And we just get caught in this web where we think, okay, if I can lift X amount of weight, if I have bumpy stomach muscles, if I am a tennis world champion, then I will be loved. And so you make everything about the destination, you make nothing about the journey. And you're just kind of kicking the can down the road until later on when you realize that you haven't enjoyed the process at all and you maybe don't even remember why you were willing to sacrifice so much for what you were doing. I laugh now looking at the way people exercise because it has very little to do with moving athletically and so much to do with looking a certain way aesthetically. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It is just a like a kink or something like that. It's a kink or a fetish or something that you get locked into. Powerlifting, Olympic lifting, crossfitting, whatever. If it's another thing where you're just paying the toll, you might want to reconsider why you're doing all that stuff because frankly a person could get very fit just going on hikes with a pack and hitting a different variety of terrain. There's not that much that you actually need to do. And I think it just takes you further away from any kind of enlightenment. Not that enlightenment is a destination either, but it's more like you are continuing to make yourself psychologically lighter. So you have less of this ego that's afraid to be wounded all the time or desperately crying out for love or power or attention. So that was something that I noticed the other day. And my guess is that most people who exercise are doing it more to pay a toll to achieve a result they want, which is not necessarily bad, but you may want to reconsider what you're hoping to achieve and get to the core of it. Like we talk about love, power, attention. That's what people want in order. And I know that was it for me. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be powerful. I wanted people to, frankly, revere me for my athletic prowess and later my business and intellectual prowess. And so it had very little to do with what I was actually doing and everything to do with how I might be perceived. And I do think that takes away from the craftsmanship aspect of it. So that's one of the few things I've been kicking around lately.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend last week. We had a Friendsgiving, and she is the lightest as an adult. She's the lightest she's ever been. So she was a little chunky, and she was doing CrossFit. She was hitting it hard. She was doing some powerlifting. She was running. She was doing all this stuff and could never lose any weight. And then she took a break from all of it. And then when she came back, she decided to just look at the sun within the first 30 minutes of waking up. And because her energy was always an issue. That
Mm.
solved the energy issue, was just getting some sunlight first thing in the day, getting that circadian rhythm locked in. And then she was hula hooping for an hour. So she's a day trader.
Amazing.
She's a day trader. So she's got her screens in her office all set up, and she's analyzing the data and hula hooping, and she went from a size 10 to a size 4 in a matter of months. And she
Mm.
said it just fell off. And she didn't step on the scale along the way. People told her she was looking good. She didn't believe them. And then her yoga pants were falling off at the airport one day. And so she goes, well, I should go buy some new clothes. I guess she said when you're wearing yoga pants all the time, it's really hard to tell if you're gaining or losing
Mm.
weight. And so she went and put on new clothes and found out, oh shit, I'm a size 4 now. And she realized that all the other training she was doing, all the psychological stress of the training, the physiological stress of the training, she was under too much stress and her body was just hanging on to the body fat. And
Hmm.
just looking
Sympathetically
at the
driven.
sun, yeah, looking at the sun and hula hooping did it
Yeah.
for her, you know. Not that's the end all be all of exercise, but she was doing something she enjoyed. She wasn't tracking the weight, and it just happened.
And I mean, there's so much good stuff there. There's a consideration that vitamin D isn't even a vitamin, but it's actually a hormone, or at least it's a hormone precursor. So crazy important for
It's
your
called a
immune
master
system, for your
hormone.
energy. The other thing to consider is if you're doing something you enjoy, you're in a very different state, right? Than if you're doing something where you're essentially battling. You're battling the weights, you're battling your previous score. And for some folks, it is the best thing ever to have something that they are really competitive with. And that's a good outlet. But I'm wondering if for this gal, a lot of what she was doing was making it so she was less inclined to self soothe with food, also. Because there's got to be some sort of a foundational sense or feeling, as I said, sympathetic versus parasympathetic, that would make it so she's not looking to escape what is
Yeah,
with
I think
something
at
like
the
food.
core of it is, I've seen this with so many clients. At the core of it is she was experiencing more self love, compassion, didn't
Mm.
need to use. A lot of people associate exercise with punishment. This is why I tell parents definitely don't make your kids do burpees or push-ups as a punishment, because then they're just going to hate exercise, or they're
Totally.
going to use it against themselves poorly. And so, I think so. When I've worked with clients who hit a realization of self love and they give themselves a lot of compassion and acceptance, usually what happens, and they drop a bunch of weight really fast, or they get in the best shape of their life right afterwards. I think it's because they're actually tuning into what it is their body needs, and they start giving themselves what it's been asking for. And so
Mm.
it's if that's the where you're coming at from the core of your being, is in caring for yourself instead of judging yourself for not being good enough, then you're likely to skip the Snickers bar. You're likely to eat more nutritious food. You're more likely to move frequently. I think there's a lot of things that would be very difficult to measure when you move from a place of I'm not good enough and I've got to torture myself to get there, and move into I'm going to do what's good for me. Another frame that I've used is, hey, I'm going to live to 170. So when I go in to train in my
Mhm.
gym, I train for 170. I don't train for, you know, uh, spring break. I'm not looking
Right.
to, it's like, oh, I got to like get like you say, a lumpy stomach, in the next 2 months. I'm thinking, oh, I got to, should I really push the deadlifts today? Like I'm picking up heavy weight. I want to be able to pick up heavy weight till the day I die. But that doesn't mean that I should try to go for a 5 pound PR when I notice that I got a little tweak in my back. That's I'm going to back off. But, the 22-year-old that's prepping for nationals and 6 weeks away, I'm talking about myself, um, and you fuck yourself up and because you're focusing on too short of a timeline. I mean, this applies to finances, or it applies to everything. The shorter the distance you're trying to optimize for, the more long-term damage you're likely to incur.
Well, I think what you're talking about is if you're a professional, you accept the sacrifice. It's like that sumo documentary I liked where
Yeah.
the guy destroyed himself to get some glory out of sumo wrestling. And they ask him at the end, after he's totally broke, he's broken. He's broke financially, he's broke physically. And they go, how would you feel if your son would do sumo? And he said, I would love that very much, because for him, the chance at glory is worth that price. And that's the difference between being a professional and an amateur. And if you
Yeah.
have the luxury of being an amateur, you get to do things from a place of love. If you are going to be entering a full contact kickboxing match, you would be well served to love yourself, but you also better freaking train or you're going to get your head kicked in. There are dire consequences to being a professional that you just have to accept as part of the cost of doing business. But the idea of training for longevity is so different than training for performance. And I ask and have asked these questions a lot about, well, how strong is strong enough? How mobile is mobile enough? And frankly, people get very greedy for things like muscle and strength and range of motion. It usually level one is people are greedy for the way they look. They just want to look a certain way. And then later it goes to, oh, I want to see how strong I can get because they saw some other strong guy on Instagram or something like that. And then sometimes it becomes a flexibility freak show contest. And I got bought into it too. I was doing all this crazy flexibility stuff without even really considering how much flexibility I wanted or needed to have. And it all comes back to that greed. What are you trying to really get out of it? And in order to live a very long time, I usually say you need uh, friends, you need some fitness, but not too much, and you can't eat too much food, and that's basically it.
Yeah.
Probably faith would be good too, like faith in the future, faith that you can do something, or just gratitude, which is a type of that.
I think one place where people get a little confused that I've noticed too is they avoid discomfort, and they say, I'm avoiding discomfort because I love myself. It's like, nah, no, you're avoiding discomfort because you you don't want to do something uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that it's an interesting line to walk where I go, okay, I'm training for longevity. I'm doing this because I care for myself and I want to be able to, um, live the best lifestyle possible, which is going to require me to push it past the point of comfort in the gym. It's going to
Mm.
require I jump in the sauna and sweat, spend a few more minutes in there than I really want to be in there. Same for jumping in a cold plunge. These are all things that are going to raise my vitality over time. These are things that even later on that day or right afterwards, I'm going to feel the positive impacts of it.
Mm.
And it's just that the necessity of thinking about a longer period of time. It's like, okay, I'm going to feel better after this, so I'm going to do this. I think a lot of people today, they've never actually done anything difficult. Um, like they never chosen to do anything difficult. I'm not saying people aren't exposed to difficult times, but when you choose to do something difficult and you come out the other side and you get the reward, uh, there's something to that. And I think a lot of people, I think especially younger people, haven't face much discomfort at all through choice, and it's silly to them to do that. But I mean, if you look around at just the school bus stops near my house, and I have some kids that walk by, and they're slumped over their phones with a backpack on their back. And just like it just looks everyone's posture is so terrible. They're just
They're escaping reality. They're hiding,
dude,
basically.
it's nuts. It's nuts. And I
Mm.
think we've got an entire generation of people who are totally out of touch with reality.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's only different this time around because it follows them around in their pocket. It's the ultimate dopamine machine. But there have always been, people who were addicted to television or whatever. With with this generation, I think some people will be permanently screwed up. I think it's possible to work yourself out of that. I mean, I'll get addicted to anything myself. Like if I give up one thing, I'll just pick up something new and suddenly become obsessed with it. It's just about finding something that's mostly constructive rather than destructive, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm. I mean, uh, it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing. That's why it's so important to have a community around you that are healthy. Basically, you do become very much like the people you associate with most, and try as you might uh, to be different than that. It's not really the way it works. But what you're talking about before, it's basically deferred gratification. That's what allows you to be exceptionally fit, exceptionally rich, whatever. You have to be willing to put in some effort without a reward for longer and longer. And if you are training yourself to not wait for a reward, to have constant rewards with no effort, what is going to inspire you to put in effort for a deferred reward? You have no chance. It's like trying to train a dog to do tricks for you, but you feed him treats all day anyway, no matter what. Just every 5 seconds, you give the dog a treat. There's no way he's going to pay attention because he knows that he can get something for nothing, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a skill to develop. I like to think about any type of character trait is actually a skill. And if you have not worked the muscle of delayed gratification in your life, then doing it is going to seem insurmountable. But if you've been practicing that in different areas of your life, when it comes time to do that, it just becomes so easy. So, if someone's listening to this and goes, man, I'm such an instant gratification person all the time, small steps. You don't have to immediately start planning for, your retire. It's like people get out of college and they get to their first corporate gig, and the kid never thought past graduation. It's like, okay, I'm gonna graduate, and then I'm gonna get that house and that car and that
Mm.
job, and then so you're 20, let's just call it 24. You're 24 years old, and they go, okay, now it's time to start saving for retirement. That's 45 years away. Like what? I
I
can't do
started
that.
that in high school.
Yeah, well, see, you practiced it. Like you had an advantage in that was a conversation that you were having either internally or were exposed to in some way. But so many people, that's just one example of the lack of that type of thing. And yeah, kids. I don't know. I say kids these days. I
Kids
sound like
these
an old
days.
old fart here.
Wow, you're talking about Linux and computers and kids these days. Fucking snoring over here, dude. This we got an episode called MDMA versus cocaine. Now it's fucking Linux and kids these days. We lost all of our fucking subscribers today. They're gone.
All right, we got range, folks. This is range is what we're talking about.
So I have these excellent rocking chairs.
Yeah,
And there's nothing quite like a rocking chair because it's a free ride for your vestibular system without expending too much effort. And this
yeah,
is, I'm half joking because rocking chairs are an old man's game, basically. But they have shown actually that having some sort of dynamism for your vestibular system like that is way better than just sitting stagnant for someone who's already pretty sedentary. Anyway,
mm,
enough
mm,
super old person stuff. But
mm.
let's see. How do we bring this back online here? What's our point today? I mean,
Uh,
you get what you get.
well, I think
I
we all
try
need to
not to
be
say
training. We all need to
I
be
try.
training to fight the robots. I mean, that's really where we're going.
Hmm. Okay, training to fight the robot. I have a different strategy. I'd like to formally swear my fealty to our robot overlords or whoever wins the coming revolution. I always knew you guys could do it. I was on your side from the very beginning, and whatever you need me to do, I'm here for you. I
Can
realize
I?
that I have two dark sides. I have two primary dark sides. One is vengeance. I have a really twisted mind. So I go a little bit dark when I hear that someone has done something bad. And if I'm watching a movie and the bad guy gets killed quickly, my dark side is like he got off way too easy. That guy needs to live in a basement for a few years and have little slices of him cut off before they're cauterized with an iron for a long time. That guy needs to be burnt with acid and sleep deprivation and all that stuff. And so I get really dark and vengeful when I think someone's evil. My other dark side is cowardice. So if there's an opportunity to avoid a problem, if there is an opportunity to fly under the radar or tall grass gets cut kind of thing, my dark side is very quick to just duck and cover.
Yeah. I,
I know
I,
those two things about myself. Sort of opposite ends of the spectrum, but the vengeance and the cowardice, I'm I know them well, basically, and I know they're there.
so self-aware. I love it. Yeah, I think about people. I'll be talking to people, and they're talking about they may be pessimistic about the future, and sometimes I'll be like, yeah, or I may even say I may be pessimistic for people in the future. Where I go, yeah, you might want to pay attention to this, or I'm trying to encourage people to pay attention to certain things, and they're like, Mike, what are you so worried for? Like you're so scared for yourself. I'm like, not really. I think like you, very adaptable. You throw me into a communist country, I'm gonna figure out how to excel there, right? Like
Mm.
that going back to like the cowardice, like the not he's like, okay, I have principles until the rubber meets the road. And not I'm not I like to think I have principles that I would stand up for and this and that, but if you know there's some type of big change in how things work and all of a sudden the way things were isn't happening anymore, I'm not gonna I'm gonna do my best to try to like make the world the way I think it should be, but at the same time, like push comes to shove, like I'm gonna be okay. I'm more concerned about the people who are just going along with everything. People think that I'm afraid for me. I'm like, I'm not really that afraid for me or my family. I'm more
I think
concerned with
that's
the general population, because the thing is we're all in this
that's because
together.
of how it affects you, though. Just to
Exactly.
interrupt you rudely,
That's what I was
it
about to
all comes
say
back to
is
you. Yeah,
yeah, as I was about to say is I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna eat well no matter what. But
right.
all the if you're surrounded by people who are starving, that's not enjoyable anymore either. You're having to
No,
isolate yourself and this and that. I want
totally.
I want us to have that kumbaya circle and shit. But
Hmm.
I think I just want to let people know, like, sometimes people are mistaken. They're like, "Oh, you're worried that something's gonna bad's gonna happen." You're like, "I'm not that worried about me. I'm I
Mm.
as far as like my immediate safety and things like that. I'm more worried about the the whole breaking down. And now I have to deal with a bunch of dumbasses.
Which is still worrying about you, though,
Of course,
ultimately.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want my world to be beautiful.
Me
You know.
too. Me
Yeah.
too. But you gotta step one, I think, is acceptance of what is, right? Like you said, if you're suddenly in a
Always
communist country, you find a way to make it work. You could spend your whole like
become a
people today.
politician or a thug. Yeah.
You what's the difference? You spend your whole
Well, I was thinking about the thug is the one that just takes orders. The politician is the one who's giving them.
mm.
Which one's worse?
So
Which one is it? Is it who is more morally on the hook? The person
I
giving the
like
order or the one
transparency. So
following it?
I have more respect for the thug who says, "Give me 20% of what you make or I'll break your fucking knees." By the way, I'll protect your shit for that same 20%. And no, you don't have any say in what this 20% goes to do or I'll fucking kill you. I kind of respect that transparency more.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is like the guy actually breaking your knees or the guy sending the guy to break your knees.
That reminds me of those guys who said that they were just following orders, right?
Right.
Uh,
Well, who's more morally at fault? The order follower
mm.
or the one that's giving the orders?
This is a great moral question. As far as it relates to me, the
No, I
person
think
who's doing that direct, like if the big boss man in the big chair says, "Hey, Mike, I need you to go steal half of Max's shit," I'll murder you as quickly as I can to avoid that happening. So I will really only have a quarrel with you in the short term, but in the long term, that other guy is a jerk too. It's more about proximity, I think.
Well, no, think about this. All right. So you've got a sitting president and they order a strike on, we'll go back to the what are they called? The drones. They go,
Hmm.
they tell this 23-year-old video game playing drone operator in Nevada that they need to smoke this dude in Russia.
Mm.
And so the kid just goes, you know what? I'm just gonna like, yeah, I'm just playing my video games, smoking people.
Hmm.
And so who's more at fault? The president giving the order or the gamer?
I mean, is that an answerable question? I'm assuming that the gamer has the choice between following orders or being killed. So probably the guy giving those orders. I tend to think that when you have one person in charge of a large group, that's when things get really bad. It's like the separation between the violator and the violence has to do with the prevalence of it. Like, if you're the president of a country or the czar or whatever, you're not going to go start strangling people. Probably you're going to send someone else to do that, and they're going to
Totally.
send someone else, and they're going to send someone else, and they're going to send a drone. And through those degrees of separation, they don't even feel it anymore.
Right.
And so, uh, it's it's one of the realities of the world today. I don't love it, but I accept that it is how it is. Uh, yeah, probably the one coercing the violator into the violence is the worst one because it really is under threat of death, basically. Like you must do this or else. So
Well, I
that's
mean, the U.S.
it's very
military, that's
common
not
throughout
really true.
history.
You just get kicked out.
Yeah, I mean maybe.
All right, even if the punishment is death, I say that the person who's carrying it out is the one that's most morally on the hook.
The one who swings the sword.
The one that swings the sword, they're the ones that are on the hook morally more than anybody. And
Mm.
that's because they're if there were none of
Eat.
them, that
Yeah.
person that person who is saying go kill that motherfucker is has no power. So the order followers are who give power to the order givers. And most people think about it as the other way around. But it's the reality. If someone says you got to go conduct this violence on somebody, then and I say no, and then they conduct violence on me, now they're in the immoral action, and I'm now morally justified in my own defense. And so
What
we
I'm
live.
hearing is that ex-Navy man Mike does not support our troops. That's what I took from this.
Um, what what I am saying is I encourage anyone, whether you're somebody who finds themselves following orders on a regular basis or not, to use your own moral compass as you're navigating these waters. And because I was in the Navy, I understand that you follow orders in a split second and you don't ask questions because lives are on the line, right?
Mm,
And when as early as boot camp is, you know, you make your bed exactly the way it's supposed to be made on time because lives are on the line. Like everything is both urgent
hmm
and important all the time, which actually ends up diminishing anybody's ability to good decision making. So they're basically breaking down your ability to make good decisions or any decisions whatsoever. And then they wonder why when guys get out they can't do shit. It's because they just spent a minimum of 4 years being told that not to think. Uh,
Yeah, how
and
could you be normal after that, really? It would take a very special person to be normal after an experience like that. Because, like you said, you're not taught as much at certain levels to think. You're taught to execute what someone else has thought about.
that's your job. And so
You're a tool.
yeah, we have a bunch of tools running around, and they uh it look, I understand this conversation can be very triggering for people. And you know, if you've been hanging out on this show for very long, then that should be no surprise that you might get triggered. But yeah,
If this is your first episode, we apologize.
oh yeah, we just put you right through the ringer. But the thing is when I look out at the world, I look at the landscape of the world, and the problem isn't poor leadership, or isn't poor like we don't have the right president in there, right? People are like, if you go online, you go on TikTok. I don't go on TikTok, but I see clips from TikTok on Instagram. But if you go on these things and you see these people talking, it's people are making these really great points about what's policy in the world and what's happening. And then they go, and that's why this one guy is the answer. Like I was watching a video, it's like, and this is why
Mm,
Trump is the guy. I'm like, dude, everything you said up to that point was beautiful. You're right. But when you pin the solution on a one human being, you have
hmm
disempowered everybody. Because the if we want real peace in the world, that means that every person needs to elevate their own critical thinking. They need to be able to say, "Oh, I've got my own moral compass. It's someone is asking me to do this, but I'm not going to, you know what? I've done my own assessment and I don't feel good about this." Uh
mm,
and so w- through, we've talked about, school being obedient school and this and that. I mean, the before the military boot camp, it's probably why I didn't get along too well when I was in the Navy, was because I mean I got along well in some respects, and I ruffled a lot of feathers along the way, like a lot. Um,
shocker.
yeah, the only reason I probably didn't get in more trouble is because I was really good at what I did. Like I was good at the job, but I was very if I didn't think that something mattered, I actually used my own judgment a lot, and I caught a lot of shit over it. I got in trouble for shit that actually didn't matter. I never got in trouble for shit that did matter. So, uh, but we have people that are trained in school to not ask questions, not critically think, and then they may go in the military. It's just we if we want to have a chance at having, you know, the utopia that people really dream of, the reason people go vote is because they want the world to look the way they want it. It's not about who's going to get elected. It's about let's help educate the world on how to make good decisions on their own, to critically think, to have their own moral compass, to realize. And when I mean morality, I mean all that means is do no harm. You
Mm.
don't fuck with me, I won't fuck with you. Like, do no harm. The moment I go out of my way to harm you, that's a immoral thing. And so,
Well, yeah.
and if
And
everybody started, I know it's a tall order, but and it doesn't have to be everybody. I think it really just needs to be 51%. If 51% starts operating that way, then everything crumbles, and that is institutionalized violence will start to crumble, and people will be held personally responsible. And when that happens, then good things will happen to most people.
well, people want a savior. They want someone to come and save them, especially if they've been taught to follow instructions from somebody else. So it's not surprising
I
that
was
people
talking,
want that. It
I
has to
mean,
do with worshiping false idols, though. You end up
yeah,
worshiping these different false idols. And I'm not saying it should be Jesus or Muhammad or whatever, but we hero worship these
Joe
people.
Biden.
And that, yeah, exactly. Any of these guys, it's like, really? No, it all comes back to you. The only reason you think that guy is good is because you think it's going to help you on some level because of some crazy belief that you inherited, most
Yeah,
likely, that you don't
yeah,
even know the origin of. And once again, it's not a surprise that this is the way things are, but it is um, correct what you're saying that it has to change from the individual out, not from policy down. Right?
yeah,
You don't create like the whole idea of the American Revolution was about putting the power back in the hands of the individual. At least from what I've read. I mean, it could have been something far more nefarious, but the idea that across the board, the thing they did was try to arm the people with freedom of thought, Amendment One, freedom of violence, uh, not from violence, but of violence, Amendment
mm-hmm,
2, and
mm-hmm,
then separating all the powers as much as they possibly can between the nation, between the states, the church, and the state, and then the branches of government. The whole point of governance, when it's done right, is you shouldn't need to do very much. You should just need to protect the marketplace. But as it stands now, people are so whipped up into a frenzy about I hate this guy, I love this guy. There's no consideration for the secondary and tertiary consequences of any of the things that people say they allegedly want. They're just so quick because it's become so us and them to say we should rob and pillage these other guys to do this thing that we like on our side.
yeah,
Those guys should be robbed to do this thing that we like, and whether it's the illusion of free shit like free healthcare and free college and free this and free that, and it's like everybody wants to get something for nothing, which is impossible. Has to come from somewhere. You got to rob Peter to pay Paul. But what we do is we do aim to show people how they can get more for less. You cannot get something for nothing, but you can get more for less. You can get more results professionally, financially, physically for less effort. In fact, the less effort you use, the less you strain and grind, the better the result is going to be. The higher the vibration that you're in psychologically, emotionally, the better that creativity is going to flow from you. The more you're going to do things from a place of love and abundance rather than fear and scarcity. So it's kind of uh, it's just sad and weird. I don't have a better. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, but it's um, it's natural to want more for less, and it's possible, but it still does come back to that deferred gratification. Can you be patient to work on something for a bit? Give it some time. Give it a minute. When you're doing isometrics, give it a minute and you'll feel some muscles come online that maybe you've never felt. If you're working on a book, give it a month, give it a week, give it an hour of your time without doing something else. And I understand the difficulty in that because you have a supercomputer in your pocket. And like me, you're a curious individual. I want to see what else is out there. But yeah, getting stuck into us and them stuff is not the way forward.
Yeah, I think about I mean all stories over all the good stories over time there tends to be heroes and villains and that whole drama triangle. But I think
Hmm.
about the amount of exposure that our culture has to Hollywood movies where how many times from Disney all the way to adulthood
Hmm.
do are people exposed to the the hero uh, complex. They're exposed to this idea that you know there's a bad guy. That bad guy, it's their fault for making things bad. Maybe the person that it's bad happening to. They made some poor decisions too, but then they overcome and triumph and they save the day for everybody else. And so few people put themselves in the role of the hero and are looking around for the hero. But man, that program, the conspiracy theorists, yeah, I get the conspiracy theorists way because when you realize how bad it is and how much impact it's having, it's it can be difficult to believe that it's not on purpose. It's like, okay, I could see, I try to give people benefit of a doubt and all this, and I go, yeah, but it kind of seems like it seems so good that it had to be planned, and so, or maybe it's just our collective consciousness doing a number on ourselves. It's hard to say.
Oh, there's so much I want to say to that. First off, I hate the phrase conspiracy theorist. Just because you think a thing that other people don't think, right?
Right.
The other thing
Well,
is,
you know where the term
it,
conspiracy theorist came from. Do you know?
originally, like, I understand what those two words mean.
Oh, so now the CIA coined it after
There you
John
go.
F.
That makes
Kennedy.
sense.
Yeah, John F. Kennedy was
Perfect.
assassinated, and anyone,
And in another 75 years, we'll figure out why they lost his brain, right?
and
I'm sure.
so
I'm sure there's a great explanation for why
along with
that is.
the original videotape of us landing on the moon. Uh,
We
so
lost that too. God,
yeah,
those
yeah.
silly librarians fucked us again.
So
Uh,
yeah, well, the CIA coined it, and they identified people who were bringing these things up, and they started calling them conspiracy theorists, and then it was a demeaning term. So
it's
it
an
was
ad hominem attack. You're the devil. Don't even listen to that devil. It is same
exactly.
shit, just recycled over and over. I fucking hate it.
So I end up at
Um,
parties where people are asking me like, "Oh yeah, what's your favorite conspiracy theory?" And then someone I can tell that somebody is almost rolling their eyes in the corner. I'm like, "Hey, I just want to remind you that this is a theory. This is just a story that people are passing around as a possibility. I don't actually
uh,
believe this. I believe this as much as I believe CNN, which is almost not at
mm,
all. So
yeah.
this is entertainment value, and there's a lot of facts hidden in these narratives that get thrown out. The baby gets thrown out with the bathwater.
There's so much that I would love to say right now. My
Just
God,
say it, Max.
I don't even know. I
Just
don't even know where to go with it.
I've
But
got another
okay, so
track to go on as soon as you're done, but
okay, so
because we got to get the by the end of the show. Just the hook. I got to put it here is we're going to talk about Balenciaga.
okay, perfect. So conspiracy theory is just an ad hominem attack. All of this stuff is just ideas. So like Newton's laws of motion and the theory of gravity, those were proven using our current available methods at the time to be true until Einstein came along and said, actually, theory of relativity explains that, plus all this other stuff. So we said, okay, this is true now. So theory means it's proven, but that's always just based on our current shit. So, um, as far as the nefarious plotting of those in power, history has shown that that happens all the time. People meet in secret all the time. I hold secret meetings with the people who work for me at the gym, not for nefarious means, but we do think about how can we get more people in the gym. It's not like for bad shit, but people
Which
meet in
is kind of
secret all the
nefarious
time.
if you've ever
That's
been
what it could.
there. There's a bit of torture
Okay,
going on over there.
language is a conspiracy that is privy to no other creatures for the most part, right? So anyway, that
This is why
whole
I
ad
get so
hominem
uncomfortable
thing.
when my fiance and her mother start speaking in Spanish and rattling off so fast I can't keep up, and then I'm
Wait till
get
they
self
start speaking in
conscious.
tongues. Then it'll really freak you out. As far as the nefariousness, um, when there's opportunity and incentive, you can almost guarantee that it happens. You don't have to think the person's evil or good or whatever. Like right now, there are humans having sex with non humans. As we speak, for sure. There's no question. There's incentive and there's opportunity. That is going on right now. Just because it's not front and center in our awareness doesn't mean that it's not happening. If dogs, if someone invented a machine that allowed humans to understand what animals are saying, you would have a lot of pets suddenly die before that invention got to them. They're like, oh man. Uh, so anyway, incentive and opportunity, wherever those intersect, the thing is happening. As far
Yeah,
as the good and evils of people, there's a passage in the Tao that I love, which is, "What is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job?" If you don't understand this, you'll get lost no matter how intelligent you are. I think it's on it's like page 5 or something. It's one of the first few things, and it is so true. And people get lost in that. They go straight to the hero worship. They go straight to the this guy is the devil kind of thing. Uh, as far as what conspiracy theories I like, my favorite one to talk about is the Big Bang,
mm,
because people are so certain that that's what happened. But the Big Bang is based on a tremendous amount of faith, just the same way that atheism, the belief that there is definitely no God, is based on a tremendous amount of faith. And I don't know if a more arrogant person exists than Neil deGrasse Tyson. Have you heard that guy talk before?
he's
That
very
guy,
certain about a lot of theories.
that guy's head is larger than the observable universe. It is unbelievable. Like, so I actually heard he was talking to Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan asked him about the Big Bang, and the Big Bang theory is one of my favorite things because how do you explain that everything came from nothing instantly for no reason? That is, there is no bigger leap of faith. That is the same level leap of faith as God. And so Joe asks Neil deGrasse Tyson about that. And the first thing Neil deGrasse Tyson did was, "Well, what website did you read that on?" he went straight for an ad hominem attack. And I was like, "You pathetic worm!" It is so embarrassing, and this is why science is getting such a bad
I
rap
think
now. Is that
Ram
people?
Dass is the one who I don't know if he's the one who originated it, but he stated something about that.
I think Terrence McKenna was actually the first place I heard
Well, those guys were
that.
homies, so
I so there's a great conversation between the two of them free on YouTube. You can look up, and it's quite a trip. And per usual, try not to hero worship either of them and take it with a grain of salt. Everyone's just playing their part in this everythingness, right? But man, it's funny how difficult it is for there to be intelligent discourse about something without those logical fallacies, like appeal to authority. Most scientists believe X, or ad hominem attack. Well, what website did you read that on? Totally neglecting any kind of conversation about the veracity of that claim or not. It blows my mind. I mean, we could do a whole thing about that. But anyway,
yeah,
that's it.
the idea of using yeah, as you were describing that, I was thinking about, do I use ad hominem attacks unconsciously? And I'm trying to run through my mind, and I'm sure I have, but I don't. That's not a regular. That seems like a dick thing to say. Like
Totally.
I would feel like a
Not
dick
cool at
if I
all.
did that.
Yeah. Well, and usually it has nothing to do with the arguer's ability to make a cogent argument. It's like, oh, you shouldn't listen to that doctor because he cheats on his wife, for example. No, he's like obviously not a faithful husband, but that probably does not influence his ability to make an argument about something medical.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think about so when you start down thinking about these things and going down these dangerous paths that are a threat to our democracy, the
What's a bigger threat to our democracy? The fact that the majority of people voting are fat drug addicts, or the fact that the people who they vote into power have too much power? I mean, is
yeah,
it a chicken or the egg kind of thing?
yeah, yeah, it's all fucked.
Chicken or the egg, by the way, is actually really straightforward, I think. I think two almost chickens had a chicken egg. So I'm clear that the egg came before the chicken.
Had to
Uh,
have.
I think I think that I think that statement, which came first, the chicken or the egg, is very glib. I think that it is obviously the egg, and if anyone wants to have an argument about it, I'm your guy.
He's
I'm on
ready.
team egg.
He's ready.
I drew my line. Team egg.
Maybe that's what we should talk about next week. I'll be chicken, team chicken. You'll be team egg, and we'll come up with our arguments.
You would be team chicken.
Well, I think about the Big Bang. All right, so um, and what's the incentive? So who benefits from, say, all right, so rewind 100 years ago, public school, they were teaching creationism, right?
Mm,
So uh, it was taught that, I think it was commonly taught. I'm not 100% because I wasn't there, but I think that there's this
mm,
general consensus from the church that the world is about 6,000 years old and yada, yada, yada. And so then, there's evidence that comes up. It was like, we actually found something that shows that the old Earth, that doesn't really make sense that it's only 6,000 years old. And but I wonder, like, who benefits from everyone becoming atheist, and that's what concerns me.
the only other higher power held by mortal man, which
Exactly,
is kings and presidents and all that stuff. Totally.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
if there is no God, then you must answer to someone, and people just, that's what they want. They want to. So the older I get, the more value I find in religion. for that purpose. Is I would say a lot of people
At least
would.
faith. At least faith, if not religion, right?
Well, I see the benefit in religion, and that people who aren't have not had access to mystical experiences, it gives them a
Community, for
foundation.
sure.
It gives them a foundation to operate from, like morally. That someone hands you, you're handed the principles um,
Mm.
that are good to live by. I mean, someone who's living by all the Christian standards morally, they're good people. They're doing good stuff. They tend not to fuck shit up too bad, and I get along with them great. Uh,
There's a lot of good ideas there. No question.
yeah,
No
yeah.
question.
You
I
follow the
like,
Ten Commandments, you're solid.
well, and there's a good George Carlin bit about how it should be reduced to two because it's like just too complicated, and it's a funny bit. Uh,
I'll have to check it out.
but I like how it's a just like Aesop's fables. It's a storybook with rules rather than a rule book with stories, which is what law is. Law is a rule book that is more or less arbitrary with stories of how we have applied those arbitrary rules versus the Quran, the Bible, uh, whatever the Mormons read. That's a storybook
The real
with
Bible.
rules. Yeah,
I don't know.
The real one. Look, I want a planet also.
Hey,
Which
Mormon people out there, let us know. What is it? I know we have some former Mormons listening in.
I think it's called the Book of Mormon. I think that's
I
what they
I,
read.
I think that's the that's the
I
play.
think it's also the Broadway show by the South
Yeah,
Park guys.
yeah. Which I've yet to
But
see. I heard
I
it's
know, me too. I
amazing.
can't believe it. I missed it.
Yeah, I remember
I
when they
mean,
came through
I think
San
it's
Diego.
still going
I was
on.
like on my way out of town or something.
Hmm.
Whatever.
So anyway, I see the value in having a focal point for faith that is not a living person. I think
Yeah.
that's pretty huge.
Yeah, because a
Um,
living person wavers, right? It changes. That's what we were talking about. They lack courage. They lack principles. Whatever it is.
absolute power corrupts absolutely. I tend to believe that that's the case. I'm more of
There's quite
a
evidence for it.
there's a
There's a
there
mountain
are
of it.
many examples. There are many examples of how that shakes out. I, my favorite description so far is the Tao. The Tao Te Ching is certainly my favorite book of any type of philosophy and mysticism. Its concision and openness are better than anything. I mean, I've read Book of the Buddha also, tried to read the Bible, but that is a tough read. And
Especially the
even in
Book
the
of
Book of the
Numbers.
Buddha, it's like, don't worship any other uh, gods before me type of thing. Uh, it's a very jealous relationship
I
from
think
a
I,
supposed deity,
I
whereas
think
the Tao is not like that. It's an acceptance that we don't even know what everything is. We just call it the Tao, for
right.
lack of a better word.
I think the what studying Buddhism and Christianity, I think they have a lot in common. A lot in common. Someone who's
A
studied
lot of
both,
religions
like
do.
if you read Buddhism, if you study Buddhism and then you go back to the Bible, the meaning transforms pretty heavily. That's been my experience. All right, no, let's bounce into. I don't even know if I know how to say the name of this brand, Balenciaga. Is that right? Are you following this shit?
No.
No. Oh man, most people who are listening to this probably do. By the way, Twitter is become a very interesting place since I've been letting people back on. I think that's actually I think what we're seeing is a turning of the tide. There's been so many people that have more conservative or conspiracy theory type viewpoints that were kicked off of Twitter. I think it made it global, like the globally for all social networks. It made it easy for Instagram, Facebook to uh, have the algorithm favor certain things and not favor other things. But when Twitter opened up, I mean,
Hmm.
Project Veritas is back on Twitter, which is very interesting.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah,
Those
huge,
guys are studs. Those guys are not cowards. They are putting their lives on the line
dude.
to
I mean, the
try to
FBI
report.
raided them.
uh,
When the FBI raids
Fucking
a journalist,
crazy.
dude,
No
you're a
knock,
journalist and the FBI
no
raid you, you know
warning.
you did a good job.
It isn't it like so we're talking primarily about censorship. And now we're talking about the removal of what was very aggressive censorship.
Right.
And I'm a simple guy. I don't know a lot about what's going on, but censorship to me is an admission of guilt more than anything else. It's like you
Totally.
cut out a guy's tongue and then you just prove him right, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so what I'm witnessing in just social media world is I think that Instagram has had to open to like loosen up its algorithms a bit. Uh, and I'm noticing people popping in back in my feed that were shadow banned. I have a client right now that has been kicked off of many platforms for just sharing information. Um, so it's interesting watching this open up because here's the thing: is if I can go on Twitter and I start seeing a lot of action around a topic, and then I don't see it on Instagram, people start going, "Huh, what's going on here?" So I
Mm.
think Instagram is having to open up its algorithms a bit, uh,
Hmm.
and that's my theory. It's not true, folks. It's just what I think. And uh, this Balenciaga thing has blown up. Basically, I won't go into too much details. People can go do your research on it. You won't have to look very far at all if you go on Twitter. But basically, this high end, I think it's a high end. I know fucking squat shit about fashion brands, but I guess like Kim Kardashian is real big on this brand and all this, and they some photos surfaced of basically kids in BDSM situations tied up. There's like little documents that are talking about child pornography in the pictures. Basically, it's yeah. If you go, you don't have to search very far, and I'm not telling you to go do the research yourself because it's just there's so much there, and it's so concerning, and it's not. It's become one of these things where they could have swept it under the rug. I think that they could have been hidden, but basically, what's happened on social media is all these photos of the person who is in charge of like creative whatever at Balenciaga is just got all this devil worship shit. They've got all this things that are alluding to uh, pedophilia. It's become very very interesting. So this whole pedophilia conversation, which started what in like 20, I think it was pre-Trump. It's like 2015, 2016. All these conspiracy theories coming out about pedophilia and the Hollywood elite and the political elite and all this. Then this Epstein thing fucking happens and no one's been charged in connection, even though he's flying around in private jets with all the big wigs.
Dude, you're just being a conspiracy theorist. That guy just loved 18-year-olds and then he killed himself when the cameras weren't working. Come on.
so so this I'm very entertained right now because I'm watching this whole Balenciaga thing happen, and it seems like to me we're witnessing a turning point in on multiple levels. So in regard to the whole COVID thing, the major publications are now having to come out and say, most people who died of COVID were vaccinated in the last year. And they're basically having to come out and say, backtrack on everything. And then now we're looking at, okay, this major fashion brand is promoting pedophilia. This what's going on here, and so it seems like all this stuff that people have been trying to call conspiracy theories for the last 6, 7, 8 years is starting to bubble up. And part of me believed that that would happen, and part of me thought, well, maybe it never would. But
So we're fucked.
I, I, I'm I'm entertained. I would. I mean, there's a part of me that I would just love to see like some of these. Uh, uh, it just seems a little obvious. Like some people need to going. I'm gonna jump on your bandwagon. I want that vengeance, right? I got that vengeance feeling. It's like
Oh yeah.
these people are there's something going on, and what's obvious, I think what makes people angry, what makes me angry is like the people who are supposed to be protecting are not doing much about it.
Yeah. And my guess is that a lot of people who want to be in charge would love to rape kids because rape is all about power. I mean, I'm not trying to like tell any I'm not trying to say whether that's a bad or a good thing. I'm just saying that's probably the case. That's what a power dynamic is. It's about domination more than anything. So,
Oh,
if you want to if you want to dominate an entire population of people, you probably wouldn't blink to sexually dominate a child. I mean, what I don't know. That to me that just makes perfect sense that someone who loves power would want to display that power in a really imbalanced fashion. And once again, it's like, okay, if that's the case, what do you do about it? If nothing, then you get back to your furniture making. Basically, it's kind of like what happened with me with the bat flu thing. I'm not really gonna buy their made up word. Uh, it smelled fishy from the very beginning, and um, I was shocked at how quickly people fell in line, and I pretty much didn't give too many opinions on it because I saw that the only thing it would do would be to generate a lot of hostility toward me personally, and that would prevent me from being able to help more people liberate themselves physically. But there are so many red flags about how that all shook out. So I'm glad that it's okay to talk about certain things now without having your digital livelihood be extracted,
well, our
essentially.
podcast that went up on Monday still isn't showing up in Spotify or iTunes.
What did we talk about?
Well, I think the last thing was the MDMA versus cocaine. It was the Thanksgiving one. Is having a hard time posting. I went ahead and threw it up on YouTube and threw out an email about it because shit wasn't. I don't know if we got the old
It
shadow
makes me feel
ban.
pretty cool. It makes me feel pretty cool if we got censored, though.
I
No.
said something. I said something to Ashley about it, and she was like, "You've been trying to get banned. What are you talking about?" I was all I was like, "I think I might be getting banned." She's like, "You've been trying to get banned. You should be celebrating."
It'll give us more street cred, I
For
think.
sure, for
They're
sure.
trying to shut us down, but we're gonna keep bringing the truth to you folks live every Monday.
She's like, "Do you really think that?" I'm like, I don't think we're big enough. I don't think we're big enough to shut down. But who knows? Who knows?
I mean, that's part of the reason I feel confident saying some of the stuff that I say, because I mean, I
Which is the
think
kind of attitude that makes you pop, which could skyrocket you to the top. You know.
I just wait until I have my presidential campaign, or I'd rather be king than president. President seems bad,
Dude,
but I would be
should we
king.
run that? You be king, I'll be vice king, and
Sure,
we should run some type of promo. What's it called when you do that? Not a
a
promo,
campaign.
campaign.
Yeah, yeah. We'll run a camp. Obviously, you're not the brains of this operation. You're the face.
Look, the
You
words
will
are
be the
hard,
face.
but I got the kingly beard. I think. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you can plan all the parties.
Oh,
I'll be
perfect.
uh, I'll be
Perfect.
weaving webs behind the scenes about how we can subjugate the population. I mean, liberate.
Th-
I mean,
th-
liberate.
yeah, this sounds like a great collaboration opportunity to me.
Yeah. To be fair, though, my nature is actually to be more a behind the scenes kind of character. I don't really like, in Lord of the Rings where there's that guy Theoden, the king, and the guy Wormtongue who just whispers into his ear and sort of stays in the shadows. I think I gravitate more toward that role of just whispering into the king's ear and have him kind of take all of the attention from everything.
I mean, yeah, I think you could be running Biden right now.
Maybe I am.
Yeah, yeah, you're in the earpiece, giving him directions.
It reminds me of that Pinocchio song where he goes, I have no strings to hold me down, to make me fret or make me frown. I had strings, but now I'm free. There are no strings on me. Where he becomes like a real boy type of thing. It's fucking funny.
All right, I think
Oh my
we've
gosh.
done such a good job today. We're almost an hour and a half in, and I appreciate everyone sticking with us through this long and enjoyable conversation as usual. Max, final thoughts. Share your, you know, just tell people where to find you.
You can find me at Max Shank or maxshank.com. As far as everything we talked about today, it's mostly just gossip and hearsay. So the things that are true are that you can practice some breath holding, you can practice some fasting, you can create some space for creation to happen, and then you also won't be so swayed by the torrent of alleged news that is allegedly important to you. So bring it back to that deferred gratification so you can create that space to leave room for you to grow.
Well said. You can find me on Instagram, Mike_Bledsoe. I have not been banned from there yet, and I usually have a link hanging out in my bio where you can jump on the newsletter. I'll make sure to email you every time Max and I do a show. I mean, you stuck around this long, you want to be notified. I know it. So, and just for the record, we are also on YouTube now. So if you want to see Max's nipples, that's where you go. Later, y'all.
Love you, buddy.